Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of From Rhythm to Algorithm. We are continuing our first principle, logical derivation of the axiom sensorality. We've identified a form of a word, we've identified the general form of the solution, it is what it is, and now we're showing the connection of that logic, trying to find our unique definition. Pair that definition, literally the letters, to a natural physical phenomenon, and say this is why you say that word, and then you've axiomatized a word. So that is what we're doing today. You know how we do it on this one if you've followed this at all. Just more logical connections between physical phenomenons and words. And so a bunch of different things, we'll jump around, we'll just see where we go. Just starting off, again, I've covered my notation and what I'm doing with language. Language clearly iterates, so I'm just uniterating the words or just doing a bunch of different analysis with a bunch of things that I've proven. So we'll start off with terror and error. So again, with these dichotomistic pairs, just a notation to compare and contrast two words, right? You have error, you do something wrong, and then terror, you're super afraid of something. I thought that was an interesting, again, clearly terror is based on error. So again, all of these little things that have been staring at you right in the face your whole life, and you've never really thought about them. And it's like you can see these things, right? So we have a base word, and we're adding prefix and suffix to expand the meaning, to change the logic. But what is rhetoric? This is a question, again, shout out to Miss Odie. Not really, I hate all of my high school teachers, they all sucked. But what is rhetoric? You get introduced to it in the high school, just that word, in English class, and it's like, writing style or satirical writing or just a style of writing to transmit a point. But we were literally always like, well, what is rhetoric? And you ask them that question, and then we've talked about natural definitions. So a natural definition is what is, and then a direct answer to what is blank. What is sensorality? Sensorality is. And so when you isolate one word like rhetoric, and you say, what is rhetoric? And they can't answer you. And that's what I'm showing you, is we're expanding the logic. We're connecting the words and showing what these words mean. But we did not get a good answer in high school. We still don't have one now. But what establishes connotation? You have positive and negative connotation, self-explanatory, right? It doesn't matter what you say, it matters how you say it. We change that to not really. It matters what you say and how you say it, but how you say it a little bit more or not. Playing around with the logic. But what is rhetorical, right? If we have a rhetorical question, that is a question that you're not necessarily supposed to answer, but I think more poignantly, a rhetorical question is a question that answers itself. And so we've proven there are no paradoxes, and so you just have to find the way to find the right question to ask, and it will elicit the correct response. And that is what we're doing, sifting through all of this logic. Censoring, if you will. But we have we can make another logical definitive statement about a prefix intra versus inter, right? If you're intra, right, we've talked a lot about defining systems, independent systems interacting with each other through momentum. My pen right here, me right here. We're connecting, I have tension in my muscles, I can control and contract them, I am sentient, my pen is not, and our systems can move independent of one another, right? So if you're moving intra, right, we'll just use intragalactic, right? We're in the Milky Way galaxy. If you're moving intragalactically, you're moving within the galaxy. If you're moving within your house, intrahomal, again, just using examples. The point is you're within a system. And then, which is super specific for a preposition, or not a preposition, a prefix. And then you have inter, which means intergalactic, between galaxies. Intra, within the same system, inter, amongst different independent systems. So that's very clear and evident, or empirically evident. We've talked a lot about prepositions. What is in between, right? We've talked about through, and again, my initial intuition from proving speciality on the word through, right? So again, it's some very intimate thing for systems being a part of one system or one system interacting with another independent system. Those are where these prefixes come from and what they elucidate in your language. But between, what is between, right? It's between. I can't think of another word for that. But sensorality, betweens. So we have to pair it, the axiomatic noun, to a preposition, and we'll show this noun is only grouped together with this preposition. But in between, That word, when I wrote that down, just again, a word I've used my entire life as a native English speaker, just looks so weird to me now. Between. We use the term tween. Maybe if you said like someone between the ages of 12 and 13, going between the years of teenage, from 12 to 13, or from childhood to puberty, but that word just between, within, and through, right? So now we compare in between with inter, right? The prefix inter, interdimensional, or again, that's not, okay, take that back. There's no interdimensional. That doesn't make any fucking sense. But intergalactic. So, if you're intergalactic, you're going in between galaxies. If you're within a galaxy and you're traveling or moving, you're intragalactic. So within goes to intra, and inter goes to in between. So we have to connect the logic of prepositions as well. Sensorality separates good from well. Grammatically, things you get pointed out all the time in English, words you use literally every single day, all of the time, good and well. I'm doing well, I'm not doing good is the correct grammatical presentation, but it doesn't really matter in terms of logic, what you mean, people are going to get it. But just again, everyday differentiation. Pressure pushes. Again, all force has been categorized into pressure, but now we're using our new tools of alliteration. What does that clues does it give us? Pressure pushes. It would still be alliterative to pressure pulls, but pressure pushes. But push and pull map force. What is an angle? We've built enough logic. Believe it or not, we're just getting to angles now, because we had to redo all the physics, and the geometry, and all the math. We had to do everything. It's one big group project, and Brad's pulling the whole team along with him. But how do angles form? Right? These are open questions. I'm not going to answer them because I don't know. And I don't even have enough intuition to begin to give you something useful. But what is an angle? How do angles form? What impact angle transfers maximum momentum? Right? The normal, the perpendicular. When you're in mathematics, you get introduced to the normal line, or a tangent, or something that is directly perpendicular, right? If I'm sitting out in the sun, or if someone's throwing a punch at me and it hits me, perpendicular to my face, that's the maximum transfer of momentum, as opposed to a glancing blow or something like that. And so, to hit it head on, to be normal, to be perpendicular, is the maximum of any force vector or any magnitude of a vector. But again, that's at 90 degrees, or pi over 2 radians. A little more on somatic. Again, we made somatic meaning more to muscularity as opposed to the body, but we can just use the body for now. Again, muscles are a part of the body, so again, we're getting more specific. But somatic and symptomatic. The body demonstrates conditions, right? It's a nuance, like you don't say somebody, like, what's the opposite of symptomatic? Healthy, right? If you have symptoms, you're connotating to something negative, to disease. So again, just an interesting thing that came up to me. But disease is symptomatic. What makes muscle tissue unique? It is demonstrably and evidently denser. It burns calories. But that gives us, how can we connect muscularity to sensorality? And right, because remember, don't forget, I said way back at the very beginning of this entire lecture series, again 6 years ago, that I haven't watched one time since I've started this, that I was going to define what athleticism is. So let's revisit that question. We just watched a bunch of sports. What is athletic? What is athleticism? Don't say, I like baseball, I like basketball, I like lacrosse. Give me a logical definition of athleticism. It's sensorality. Took me 7 years. Literally. You can go back and watch it. Again, I'm showing you the steps that I can keep up with. Or not that I can keep up with, that I can tell to you. And so when you see real proof at this level, it's quite a bit of logic. But anyway, what makes those, again, just connecting logic to the body. But we talked about these universal phase changes being inflationary, going huge rapid change, and then leveling off. Does that ever happen in your life? Maybe something like puberty. And so you have a direct biological analog of inflation, is puberty. And it's true physically, meaning not puberty's real, but the rapid expansion and growth and the leveling off, the asymptotic approaching of some limit, whether it's a physical bound or your maturity or your physical growth, which is also a physical bound, your physical body. Said physics a lot there. But that is all true. And so that's all to say there. Something else, just time flies when you're having fun and the days drag on, but the years fly by. Kind of just talking about the perception of time relating to your body. But if you're doing something efficient, if you're using your time wisely, you're not focusing on time. Because it's a measure of inefficiency, but if you're at a level of life, just meaning you're stable financially or whatever, that you don't have to worry about time. You don't have to worry about an alarm clock or this or that. And so you really, it's your intuition of, oh, I got to go to the store, oh, I got to go study for this, oh, I got to get the kids to baseball practice. It's like you're worried about being inefficient. But if you're not efficient at all, you don't care about time. And so, again, just some everyday quotes that people have heard. We've talked about scintillation and degradation. What's the difference? Scintillation, the photoelectric effect. I have a piece of mass here. It is vibrating. That vibration is transmitted. Sometimes, for whatever reason, people have aneurysms and call that light. But that vibration, that is why when you're in the sun, you get hot. If light couldn't make you warm, light doesn't make you warm. So when you get hot in the sun, it's not light is what's not doing that. It's the momentum. It's being transmitted to you from the sun. And so that gets transmitted, it heats up, and then it causes the electrons of an atom to vibrate, and it jumps up in an orbital level, and then when it degrades back to its natural state, its stable state, that energy dissipation comes out as radiation, not light, and that is what you see, or that's what scintillation is. And then degradation, right? An atom that has an electron resorting to a ground state orbital positioning, is that degradation, right? I'm trying to differentiate between scintillation and degradation. It's like degrading. If you said someone's degrading you, is certainly a negative connotation. They're bringing you down, they're demeaning you. But if you're degrading in a physical sense, like if my table is degrading, it's dilapidated, it's breaking down. So, but if you have a stable atom, that doesn't really apply. Degradation for scintillation doesn't really make sense. Super nuanced logic, but we have to break apart all of the words. Dispiration describes segregation. Remember, we've taken integration, the opposite of integration is segregation, as proven by history, the civil rights movement, and then segregation to separation, and then we have that word disparate, right? So if something is separated, it is disparate. So dispiration describes segregation. Extending that logic. Description. We have another flip of that B and that P. Describe, describing, description, absorb, absorbing, absorption. Another the same mechanic happening in another pair of words. Might cut off this episode here.